Eid al-Fitr, a time of forgiveness, family, and faith. In Dearborn, Michigan, the streets filled with families dressed in their finest clothes, children ran door to door with bags of sweets, and homes lit up with warm laughter and the smell of home-cooked meals. For the Malik family, Eid was more than just tradition. It was a way of life. It was about togetherness. For Ahmed Malik, a 35-year-old small business owner, it meant gathering everyone under one roof, the cousins, the in-laws, the elderly, the young. Smiles in every room. Conversations overlapping. Plates stacked high with food that took days to prepare. Among those seated at the dinner table that day, Layla Malik, Ahmed's wife of nearly 10 years. Friends would later say she laughed often that night, standing beside her husband, her gold bangles catching the light as she served guests. Her father-in-law, Hassan Rahman, sat just across the room, joking with the children, complimenting Layla's cooking, offering to help clean up after everyone left. No one watching them that evening suspected a thing. Neighbors passing by could hear music from the open windows, the unmistakable sound of family celebration. But while the house on Greenfield Road appeared full of love, something else was happening quietly, where no one was looking. Something carefully hidden behind exchanged glances and muted text conversations. Something only two people truly understood. As family members said their goodbyes and cars pulled away from the driveway, no one would have guessed that this would be the last Eid Ahmed Malik would ever celebrate. 2 weeks later, in the early hours of a Sunday morning, Dearborn police received a frantic 911 call from a neighbor. The voice on the other end was shaky, almost incoherent. Something about screams coming from the Malik household. Something about a woman running into the street barefoot, yelling for help. By the time officers arrived, the scene that greeted them inside that modest two-story home was brutal and deeply personal. Ahmed Malik, son, husband, and friend, was found motionless in the living room, blood staining the cream-colored rug beneath him. The air in the house still thick with panic and disbelief. As police secured the scene, questions began swirling. Who would want Ahmed dead? Was this a robbery gone wrong? A stranger? Or was the answer much closer to home? In the days that followed, the city of Dearborn would come to learn about a relationship so secret, so forbidden, that when the truth came out, it wouldn't just shatter a marriage, it would break an entire family apart. What drives a woman to betray her husband with the one man she should never have touched? And how far would she go to keep her secret buried? Before we continue, if you're passionate about true crime cases that rarely get told, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment below with your early thoughts on this case. There's a lot to uncover. In Dearborn, Michigan, just a few miles from the bustling streets of downtown Detroit, stood the Malik family home. A modest two-story brick house on Greenfield Road. It wasn't the largest house in the neighborhood, but it was filled with love, laughter, and family tradition. Friends and neighbors often spoke about how Ahmed Malik was the kind of person everyone seemed to know. He owned a small automotive repair shop just off Ford Road. Customers described him as patient, respectful, and kind. A man who remembered faces, asked about your family, and rarely had a bad word to say about anyone. Ahmed had built his life carefully, always keeping his faith and his family at the center of everything he did. His marriage to Layla had been arranged by both families, but by most accounts, it had grown into something more than just a social expectation. They had been together nearly 10 years. Friends from the local mosque often saw them grocery shopping together, attending community functions, and sitting side by side during Friday prayers. On the outside, theirs was a life many aspired to: 2 young children, a stable income, and a strong connection to their faith and extended family. Layla, at 30, was known for her quiet charm, soft-spoken but always present at family gatherings. The kind of woman who'd spend her days preparing homemade meals, attending parent-teacher conferences, and keeping up with the social expectations placed on her as a wife and mother in the community. The couple's relationship with Ahmed's father, Hassan Rahman, was equally close. Hassan, 56, had retired from factory work a few years earlier, but stayed actively involved in the lives of his children and grandchildren. Family members said he was often at the Malik household, fixing things around the home, helping with childcare, and sharing meals. For Layla, Hassan was more than just a father-in-law. He was someone she could turn to for advice, someone who offered comfort during difficult moments in her marriage. Ahmed worked long hours, and Hassan's presence filled in those emotional gaps, or so people thought. Eid al-Fitr that year was no different from any other. The Maliks hosted dozens of relatives. Cousins played in the backyard while uncles sat in the living room watching TV. A long dining table was packed with food, lamb, rice dishes, fresh bread, and sweets Layla had spent the last 2 days preparing. Photos from that day, now part of the case evidence, showed Ahmed holding his youngest daughter on his lap. Layla stood beside them, smiling. Hassan sat at the far end of the table, laughing at a joke only those at his end seemed to hear. Neighbors who walked by that afternoon recalled hearing bursts of laughter from the open windows. The family had stayed up late that night, drinking tea, telling stories, and sharing memories. There were no arguments, no public signs of tension. But for Layla and Hassan, their shared secret was becoming harder to ignore. Phone records would later show late-night calls that lasted hours. Text messages filled with words neither of them should have written. There were times when Hassan would visit the house under the pretense of helping fix a broken appliance. But Layla's phone location data would place her at his home later that same day. The closeness, once viewed as family bonding, had crossed a line months earlier. A line that, once crossed, left no way back. Layla's friends would later testify that she had become distant in the weeks leading up to Eid, less responsive to calls, more withdrawn during community gatherings. Some noticed she stopped posting family photos online. Others said she appeared distracted, almost on edge. For Ahmed, none of this seemed obvious. He trusted his wife. He trusted his father. To him, family loyalty was non-negotiable. 2 weeks after Eid, that loyalty would be tested in the most violent way imaginable. Police reports show that in the early hours of a Sunday morning, Layla ran into the street screaming. Blood covered her clothes. The neighbors who called 911 described the scene as chaotic. Officers responding to the call found Ahmed inside the house, unconscious, unresponsive, beyond saving. In the hours that followed, what started as a domestic violence call quickly turned into a homicide investigation. Details that had been hidden for months. Whispers of an affair, unreturned phone calls, secret meetings, would come pouring out. Layla's interviews with police revealed inconsistencies almost immediately. Hassan's alibi raised more questions than answers. The community that once looked at the Maliks as a model family began asking how something like this could happen so close to home. The cultural shock was enormous. Dearborn was no stranger to family disagreements or domestic issues, but a murder tied to an affair between a wife and her father-in-law. That was almost unthinkable. Before we continue, we want to hear from you. What would you do if you found out your spouse was secretly involved with a family member? Would you confront them, stay silent, or walk away? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this one. The full timeline, the investigation, and the shocking confession, it's all coming up next. Ahmed Malik first met Layla Rahman at a family gathering during Ramadan, nearly 12 years before the crime that would make both their names known across Dearborn. Their parents had introduced them. Both families came from neighboring communities, sharing mutual friends and a long history within the local Muslim social circle. Ahmed was 25 at the time, working full-time at the auto repair shop he was slowly turning into a successful business. Layla was 20, attending community college, studying early childhood education. By all accounts, their courtship was short but sincere. The families agreed on the match quickly. Within a year, they were married. Their early years together were filled with the typical challenges young couples face: adjusting to each other's habits, finding balance between work and home life, and eventually welcoming 2 children into their family. Ahmed worked long hours at the shop, often leaving home before sunrise and returning late in the evening. Layla stayed home with the children, managing the house, keeping up with family obligations, and ensuring her in-laws felt welcomed and included in their lives. Their marriage appeared stable to outsiders. There were no reports of major arguments, no domestic complaints, and no public incidents. Friends described them as quiet and private. Layla was often praised for her cooking and hospitality, especially during religious celebrations. Yet, beneath that layer of calm, small cracks had started to show. In the 2 years leading up to Eid, Ahmed's business had grown, but so had his time away from home. More clients meant more responsibilities. Layla often found herself alone, handling parenting duties without much support. She never complained publicly, but close friends noticed she stopped attending women's group meetings at the mosque. Invitations to playdates for her children were frequently declined. Her father-in-law, Hassan Rahman, became a more frequent visitor during this time. As Ahmed's father, Hassan had always been a part of their lives, but his involvement grew noticeably. He would stop by unannounced to help with household repairs or bring groceries when Ahmed was working late. At first, Layla's family welcomed Hassan's presence. They appreciated the help, especially with 2 small children. Layla's own parents lived out of state, and Hassan seemed eager to fill that void. Hassan's relationship with Ahmed had always been complex. As a younger man, Hassan had been strict and traditional in his approach to parenting. Ahmed rarely spoke about their past, but childhood friends recalled Ahmed mentioning that nothing he ever did seemed to please his father. Over time, the 2 men found peace, but distance remained between them. Hassan, now retired, had too much free time and too few boundaries. Layla's friends would later describe subtle behavioral changes in her. She started dressing differently, more makeup on days Hassan was scheduled to visit. Her mood shifted from distant to strangely upbeat after his visits. One friend even recalled seeing Layla in her car outside Hassan's apartment complex late one afternoon when she was supposed to be at a school event for her kids. When the affair began is still unclear. Phone records suggest their communication intensified about 6 months before Eid. Late-night calls became frequent. Text messages, many deleted by the time police obtained Layla's phone, hinted at a relationship that went far beyond casual flirtation. It started with shared frustration. Layla vented about Ahmed's long work hours. Hassan offered sympathy and a listening ear. Gradually, the conversations shifted. Compliments from Hassan became more personal. Small gifts, an anklet, a new scarf, appeared around the house. When Ahmed questioned where they came from, Layla casually mentioned family friends or online shopping. Their first physical encounter, according to police reports, happened on a rainy afternoon while Ahmed was at work. Hassan had come over to repair a leaking pipe under the kitchen sink. Neighbors reported seeing Hassan's car parked outside for several hours. When he left, Layla's curtains remained drawn for the rest of the day. The affair grew bolder as time went on. There were hotel stays in nearby towns. Layla began lying to friends about her whereabouts. Hassan, for his part, began neglecting relationships with his own siblings and community members to spend more time with Layla. Ahmed's suspicions started small. One evening, he found a text on Layla's phone from an unknown number. The message was vague, but something about it unsettled him. When he asked Layla about it, she laughed it off, saying it was from a telemarketer. Ahmed's younger brother, Kareem, who often visited the family home, noticed tension between Ahmed and Layla during Eid preparations. Ahmed was short-tempered, Layla withdrawn. On more than one occasion, family members noticed Ahmed stepping outside to take long phone calls, returning inside with visible frustration on his face. Eid itself offered a temporary peace. Family photos from that day showed smiles that didn't fully reach their eyes. Layla sat close to Hassan during dinner, laughing at his jokes, even placing her hand on his shoulder at one point when he complimented her cooking. The gesture lasted only a second, but Kareem noticed it. Small arguments surfaced throughout the day. At one point, while Layla was clearing plates from the dining table, Ahmed quietly scolded her for ignoring the children. Layla snapped back, something she rarely did in front of others. After dinner, Ahmed retreated to the backyard with a few male relatives for coffee and conversation. Layla stayed inside, talking with her sister-in-law, but kept stealing glances toward Hassan, who sat flipping through TV channels as if nothing was out of the ordinary. The night ended without further incident, but the tension lingered. In the 2 weeks that followed, Ahmed's behavior grew more restless. Friends said he became distant at work, missing appointments and failing to return customer calls. At home, conversations with Layla turned cold. Text exchanges between Ahmed and Karim revealed Ahmed's growing suspicions. In one message sent 4 days after Eid, Ahmed wrote, "Something's wrong, bro. I don't know what, but I can feel it." On the night before the murder, neighbors reported hearing raised voices from the Malik household around 11 p.m. One neighbor, who lived directly next door, later told police she heard glass breaking and what sounded like a heavy object hitting the floor. Ahmed's final known text was sent to Karim at 11:23 p.m. It read, "We're going to talk tomorrow. About everything." By morning, Ahmed would be dead. When police arrived at the Malik home 2 weeks after Eid, the crime scene told a story no one wanted to believe. The living room furniture was overturned. Blood spatter covered the walls near the staircase. Ahmed lay on the floor with multiple wounds to his chest and head. Layla, found screaming in the front yard, told officers it had been a home invasion, that she had woken to the sound of breaking glass and came downstairs to find her husband already injured. But the evidence suggested something else. Fingerprints, phone records, witness statements. The truth would soon surface, and when it did, it would send shockwaves through the entire community. The early morning air in Dearborn was heavy with humidity when the first police unit arrived at the Malik residence. It was just past 4:15 a.m. Officers had been dispatched following multiple 911 calls reporting a woman screaming and visible blood on the front steps of the house. When Officer Daniels approached the front door, the scene was immediately concerning. Layla stood on the sidewalk barefoot, wearing what appeared to be a nightgown stained with blood across the chest and sleeves. Her face was flushed, streaked with tears and what appeared to be smudges of dirt or dried blood. Her screams were incoherent at first, just fragments of words about an intruder, a fight, and her husband. Inside, the living room told a grim story. The coffee table lay flipped on its side, a floor lamp shattered in one corner. Near the base of the staircase, Ahmed Malik's body lay face up. Blood pooled beneath him, soaking into the carpet and trailing toward the front door, as though he had tried to crawl or move during his final moments. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. Ahmed had sustained multiple stab wounds to the chest and abdomen. The skin around his neck showed clear signs of blunt trauma, suggesting he had been struck before the stabbing occurred. Police began securing the scene. Crime scene tape went up around the perimeter. Curious neighbors stepped onto their porches, watching silently from across the street. Some whispered to each other, others stood in stunned disbelief. Inside the house, officers began their initial walkthrough, taking note of overturned furniture, blood spatter on the walls, and a large kitchen knife lying several feet from Ahmed's body. Layla was placed in the back of a squad car, not under arrest but for observation and safety. Her statements during the first few minutes were scattered and inconsistent. She told officers that she had been asleep upstairs when she heard glass breaking downstairs. When she rushed down, she claimed to have found her husband already injured. Detectives from the Homicide Division arrived shortly after sunrise. Among them was Detective Mark Sullivan, who had worked several high-profile domestic homicide cases in the county over the past decade. The first priority was preserving forensic evidence. Crime scene investigators collected fingerprints from door handles, light switches, and the kitchen counters. They documented shoe prints found near the back door and swabbed multiple surfaces for potential DNA. The murder weapon, a standard 8-inch kitchen knife, was bagged and sent for lab testing. An autopsy was scheduled for later that afternoon. Meanwhile, the police began contacting family members. Hassan Rahman, Ahmed's father, was reached by phone around 7 a.m. When informed that his son was dead, Hassan's reaction, according to officers present, was surprisingly muted. He asked only basic questions. When it happened, if anyone else had been hurt, and whether police were sure it was Ahmed. He did not ask to come to the scene. Later that morning, Hassan arrived at the police station for questioning. Layla remained in custody at the station as well, resting in an observation room while officers reviewed early forensic reports. Neighbors were interviewed throughout the day. Several reported hearing loud arguing from the Malik household the night before, though none could confirm who was involved. One neighbor, Mrs. Khan, said she had heard glass breaking shortly after 11 p.m., followed by a single scream. By midday, initial autopsy results were shared with the detectives. Ahmed had sustained 5 stab wounds, 3 to the chest, 2 to the abdomen. The force of the wounds suggested close-range aggression. Additionally, he had suffered a blow to the head, likely from a blunt object. Toxicology tests showed no substances in Ahmed's system that would have incapacitated him prior to the attack. As detectives reviewed the evidence, inconsistencies in Layla's story began to mount. There were no signs of forced entry at any door or window. No valuables appeared missing. Ahmed's wallet, phone, and car keys remained untouched near the front door. The pattern didn't align with a random home invasion. Layla's emotional state was also raising questions. Officers who observed her in the holding area noted that her behavior shifted rapidly between inconsolable sobbing and long periods of silence. During her formal interview that afternoon, she repeated her claim about hearing glass break, but was unable to explain why none of the windows or doors showed damage. Detectives turned their attention to phone records. A subpoena to the family's cell provider revealed something unexpected. In the hours leading up to the murder, Layla had exchanged over 40 text messages with Hassan. The final message, sent just after midnight, read, "I can't do this anymore. We'll talk tomorrow." Further investigation into previous months revealed a shocking discovery. Hundreds of calls and texts between Layla and Hassan. Communication far beyond what would be typical for a daughter-in-law and father-in-law. Detectives secured search warrants for both Layla's and Hassan's phones. In Hassan's phone history, they found hotel reservations under an alias. 2 stays in nearby cities, both booked for 1 night each. Dates coinciding with times Layla told friends she was visiting her sister. Security footage from one of the motels confirmed Layla and Hassan checking in together. The scale of the deception became clearer with each new piece of evidence. When confronted with the phone records, Layla broke down during her second interview. Through tears, she admitted to the affair but insisted she had no part in Ahmed's death. Hassan, brought in for further questioning, denied everything at first. He claimed the messages were about helping Layla through marital problems. But when detectives presented him with the hotel footage, his composure cracked. Hassan admitted to the relationship but denied involvement in the murder. His explanation shifted several times. First, he said he hadn't been near the Malik house that night. Then he admitted driving past the neighborhood around midnight but claimed it was unrelated. Layla's confession opened the floodgates for family reactions. News of the affair spread quickly through the community. Friends, neighbors, and relatives struggled to process what they were hearing. Community leaders expressed shock during interviews with local reporters. The media caught wind of the story within 48 hours. Headlines described the case in blunt terms: Dearborn man murdered in apparent love triangle. News vans parked outside the Malik home. Photographers captured images of family members arriving for prayer gatherings, shielding their faces from the cameras. Kareem Malik, Ahmed's younger brother, gave an emotional statement to reporters. "My brother was a good man. He didn't deserve this. None of us saw this coming. We trusted both of them." Detectives continued building their case. Forensic analysis of the kitchen knife revealed both Ahmed's and Layla's fingerprints, as well as partial prints from Hassan. Blood traces consistent with Ahmed's DNA were found inside Hassan's car, despite his claim of not entering the Malik house that night. A neighbor's home security camera provided additional evidence. Though the camera didn't capture the Malik front door directly, it did record Hassan's vehicle driving down Greenfield Road toward the Malik house at 11:45 p.m., about 30 minutes before police believed the murder occurred. During a follow-up interview, Hassan struggled to provide a consistent timeline for his whereabouts that night. Layla's behavior during this period only deepened suspicions. At one point, She asked detectives whether she would be allowed to attend Ahmed's funeral. She also asked for her cell phone back, despite it being held as evidence. When confronted again, Hassan's demeanor shifted from defensive to visibly anxious. Detectives described him sitting with his hands clenched tightly, answering questions with long pauses, often staring at the floor. By the third day of questioning, both Layla and Hassan were showing signs of emotional exhaustion. During a recorded interview, Layla broke down sobbing and whispered something barely audible to the officers in the room. The audio later revealed her words. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Detectives pressed her for clarification, but she refused to say more without a lawyer present. Hassan, when told of Layla's emotional collapse and partial admission, grew visibly distressed. During one session, he stood abruptly, knocking over a chair, and demanded to leave. Lie detector tests were proposed. Hassan refused. Layla agreed, but her results were inconclusive, with multiple spikes during questions related to her involvement in Ahmed's death. With growing evidence, detectives prepared to file charges. The case had started with a chaotic 911 call and a dead husband found in his living room. Within days, it became clear that the crime wasn't random, nor was it the act of a stranger. But when police finally confronted both Layla and Hassan together, what happened next shocked even the most experienced members of the department. The turning point came 4 days after the murder. With both Layla and Hassan under intense questioning, the emotional strain began to show. Sleep deprivation, mounting evidence, and the pressure of the investigation wore both of them down. It wasn't Hassan who broke first. It was Layla. On the morning of her 4th day in custody, after hours of interviews and sleepless nights, Layla requested to speak with detectives again. This time, she waived her right to an attorney. Seated across from Detective Sullivan and another officer, she began recounting the days leading up to Ahmed's death. Her voice trembled as she admitted to the affair. She described the overwhelming guilt, the lies, and the emotional hold Hassan had over her. According to her statement, Hassan had convinced her that Ahmed would never let her leave the marriage. He warned her of the disgrace that would fall upon her and her children if the truth became public. Layla insisted she hadn't wanted Ahmed dead, but her story changed when pressed about the events of that night. She claimed Hassan had entered the house through the unlocked back door shortly after midnight. She said she was upstairs when she heard Ahmed's voice raised in anger. When she reached the staircase landing, she saw Hassan striking Ahmed with what appeared to be a heavy glass object. What followed, according to Layla, happened quickly. Hassan grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter and stabbed Ahmed repeatedly while she stood frozen at the top of the stairs. Detectives immediately pulled Hassan back into the interrogation room to confront him with Layla's statement. His reaction was immediate and defensive. He denied Layla's version of events, accusing her of making up the story to save herself. However, when detectives showed him photos of the crime scene, phone records, and footage of his vehicle near the crime scene that night, Hassan's tone shifted. He fell silent, resting his head in his hands for nearly 2 full minutes. What Hassan finally admitted was both chilling and heartbreaking. According to his statement, Ahmed had indeed suspected the affair. Earlier that evening, father and son exchanged harsh words over the phone. Ahmed accused Hassan of betraying him. Hassan claimed he had driven to the Malik house that night intending to talk things out. What followed was a heated argument that quickly turned physical. Hassan stated that during the fight, Ahmed shoved him against the wall near the staircase. In the struggle that followed, Hassan struck Ahmed with a decorative glass vase from the living room shelf. Once Ahmed fell to the floor, Hassan grabbed the nearest object, a kitchen knife, and carried out the attack. For prosecutors, the admission was enough to move forward with formal charges. Both Layla and Hassan were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Layla faced additional charges of evidence tampering for attempting to clean blood from the hallway before police arrived. The trial was scheduled for early spring the following year. Media coverage leading up to the trial was relentless. Local newspapers and news stations covered every development. Social media pages filled with speculation, sympathy for Ahmed, and anger directed at both defendants. When the trial finally began, The courtroom was packed with reporters, family members, and community leaders. Photographs from the courtroom showed Layla sitting at the defense table, head down, avoiding eye contact with the gallery. Hassan sat beside his attorney, staring straight ahead with an unreadable expression. The prosecution built its case around motive, opportunity, and overwhelming physical evidence. They presented forensic reports detailing fingerprints on the murder weapon, blood spatter patterns linking both Hassan and Layla to the crime scene, and cell phone data placing Hassan at the house during the window of the murder. The lead prosecutor focused heavily on the relationship between Layla and Hassan, painting a picture of manipulation, jealousy, and emotional dependency. The jury was shown a timeline of the affair, phone records, text messages, and hotel receipts. One particularly damaging piece of evidence was a series of text messages in which Hassan had written to Layla, "If he finds out, we're both finished." Layla's defense team argued that she had been a victim of coercion. They portrayed her as emotionally vulnerable, manipulated by a father-in-law nearly twice her age. They acknowledged her involvement in the affair but maintained she played no active role in the killing. Hassan's defense strategy was to frame the event as a crime of passion, an unplanned act carried out in the heat of the moment. His attorney argued that there was no premeditation, only a tragic and violent reaction to an emotional confrontation. The courtroom heard testimony from friends, neighbors, and family members. Kareem Malik took the stand, delivering an emotional account of Ahmed's final weeks. His voice cracked as he recounted the text message Ahmed sent him hours before his death, promising to confront both Layla and Hassan about what he suspected. Forensic experts described the wounds in clinical detail, emphasizing the close-range nature of the attack and the force behind each stab wound. During cross-examination, the prosecution asked Hassan to explain how his fingerprints ended up on multiple surfaces within the Malik home that night if, as he previously claimed, he had only entered briefly. Hassan had no clear answer. Layla's testimony became one of the most talked-about moments of the trial. Taking the stand in her own defense, she broke down repeatedly. Between tears, she described the emotional toll of the affair, the isolation she felt in her marriage, and the overwhelming fear that drove her to stay silent the night of the murder. When asked why she didn't call for help or stop Hassan, she responded, "I was afraid of him, and I was ashamed." The jury deliberated for 3 days. On the fourth morning, the verdict was read. Hassan Rahman was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. Layla Malik was found guilty of second-degree murder and evidence tampering. The sentencing brought its own wave of emotion. The judge, addressing both defendants, described the crime as a betrayal of the most personal kind, a violation of family trust, human decency, and the basic duty to protect, not harm. Hassan received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Layla was sentenced to 25 years to life. The courtroom was silent as the sentences were read aloud. Ahmed's family sat together in the front row, many holding back tears. Kareem later told reporters, "We'll never get my brother back, but at least now, there's accountability." In the weeks following the verdict, details continued to surface. Unreleased crime scene photos, too graphic for public viewing, were described during media interviews with court officials. These images, showing the extent of Ahmed's injuries and the state of the home, further illustrated the violence of that night. Testimonies never aired in court but shared during pre-trial hearings suggested that other family members had suspected the affair but remained silent out of fear of public disgrace. There were even rumors, unconfirmed by authorities, that a friend of Hassan's had helped him dispose of key pieces of evidence before police arrived. However, no additional arrests were made. Some members of the community questioned whether the tragedy could have been prevented. Layla's close friends later told reporters that she had shown signs of emotional distress for months. One friend, speaking anonymously, shared that Layla once admitted to feeling trapped but never hinted at violence. For Dearborn, the case became a long-standing point of conversation. Community leaders used the tragedy as a catalyst to promote awareness about domestic violence, emotional manipulation, and the dangers of family secrets left unchecked. As for Ahmed's children, They were placed in the care of relatives. Their names and whereabouts have remained undisclosed to protect their privacy. To this day, discussions about the Malik case continue at coffee shops, on social media, and during community gatherings. The betrayal, the violence, and the courtroom drama left a lasting scar on a neighborhood that, for years, had viewed the Malik family as an example of unity. Before we move to the final part of this story, we want to hear from you. Do you believe justice was served? Was the sentencing fair? Should Layla have faced harsher punishment? Or was she herself a victim in this tragedy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more untold true crime stories. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a case that deserves to be told. Crimes that originate within a family carry a unique kind of devastation. The loss isn't just the life taken, but the trust destroyed. The ripple effect stretches far beyond the immediate household, leaving relatives, friends, neighbors, and entire communities struggling to make sense of what happened. In the case of Ahmed Malik, the violence didn't just claim a life, it tore apart generations of relationships. A father killed, a wife imprisoned, children left without either parent, grandparents turned into strangers overnight. For many in Dearborn, this tragedy served as a harsh reminder that love, betrayal, and violence are not confined to headlines from distant cities. They can happen anywhere, even in homes that, for years, seemed ordinary. Family betrayal often creates layers of trauma that victims and survivors carry for the rest of their lives. In cases like this, the emotional wounds don't heal easily. Relatives attending Ahmed's funeral spoke about their disbelief. They described moments when they sat at the same table with all three individuals, Ahmed, Layla, and Hassan, completely unaware of the emotional storm building behind closed doors. Domestic violence doesn't always look like bruises or loud arguments. Sometimes it's quiet manipulation, emotional isolation, subtle control. The Malik case exposed how difficult it can be to recognize the early signs, especially when the people involved wear familiar faces. For many in the community, the story raised difficult questions about responsibility and awareness. Could someone have intervened earlier? Were there warning signs that others missed? And how does a family begin to recover when betrayal and violence come from within? The media coverage faded after the sentencing, but the impact on those closest to Ahmed continues. His children, now growing up in the care of extended family, will one day ask their own questions. Questions that no courtroom transcript or news report can fully answer. Community leaders in Dearborn responded by increasing outreach efforts, focusing on education around domestic violence and emotional abuse. Local mosques began offering workshops on healthy family communication. Counselors were invited to speak about recognizing emotional manipulation and supporting loved ones showing signs of distress. This case also sparked broader conversations around emotional infidelity, manipulation of vulnerable individuals, and the devastating cost when those lines are crossed. For viewers watching this story from different parts of the world, it's important to remember that help is available for anyone feeling trapped, emotionally isolated, or threatened by someone close to them. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence or emotional manipulation, please consider contacting the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or visiting thehotline.org for confidential support. Tragedies like this remind us that silence can become dangerous. Secrets kept too long can grow heavier by the day. If you sense something is wrong, in your own home or in the life of someone you care about, reach out. One conversation could change a life, could even save one. Before we close, we want to thank you for staying with us through this difficult story. Do you think justice was served in this case? Could anything have been done to prevent it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more in-depth true crime stories that focus on both the facts and the human impact, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss our next episode. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware. If you found this case as shocking and heartbreaking as we did, please consider giving this video a like. Your support helps more viewers discover these real-life stories that deserve to be told. We put great care into researching, writing, and producing each episode to bring you the full truth behind cases that often leave communities searching for answers. What are your thoughts on the Malik case? Do you believe both sentences were fair? Could any intervention have stopped this tragedy before it happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one, and your opinions help shape the conversations we have in future episodes. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth true crime documentaries like this one. Every week, we cover cases involving family betrayals, hidden affairs, missing persons, and justice delivered, or sometimes denied. Also, click the bell icon so you'll be notified the moment we upload our next story. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Stay aware, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next case.